Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, let me speak to the soul of the man who walks alone. There is a pain that has no sound, a wound that doesn't bleed. When you find yourself in a season of isolation, it's easy for the enemy to whisper lies to your spirit. He'll tell you that your phone's silence means you're unwanted, that your empty inbox means you're irrelevant, that your absence from the gathering, the party, the crowd means you're failing. He'll convince you that aloneness is equivalent to abandonment, and that if no one is walking with you, it must be because there's something wrong with you. But I came to break that lie today. Just because you are isolated doesn't mean you are inadequate. See, we have become addicted to association. We measure our worth by our followers, our circle, our influence. We've allowed the presence of people to validate the presence of purpose, but purpose doesn't always come with popularity. In fact, sometimes it comes with separation. Let's go back to the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus, the Son of God, the light of the world, the Redeemer of all humanity, knelt in the dark in agony, and the very friends he brought with him could not stay awake to pray. He turned to them in his most vulnerable moment, and they were sleeping. Not one friend, not one hand to hold, not one voice to say, "I've got your back." He was alone, and yet he was never more aligned with his assignment than in that moment. Can I tell you something? Aloneness is often the gateway to alignment. God isolates who he intends to elevate. He doesn't do his finest work in the spotlight. He does it in the shadows. He doesn't shape champions on the stage. He molds them in the cave. The cocoon may look like confinement to the world, but to the butterfly, it's a sacred place of transformation. Don't misread your isolation. Don't let the enemy trick you into thinking that because you're walking this road alone, you've failed. Don't confuse the absence of company with the absence of value. Sometimes God will strip you of your surroundings to show you who you really are. Think about David. Before he became a king, he was a shepherd. Not in the palace, not in the temple, in the field, forgotten by his own family. When the prophet came to anoint a king, David wasn't even invited to the ceremony. While his brothers stood in line, dressed in their finest, David was out in the wilderness, talking to sheep and writing psalms. But that wilderness wasn't punishment, it was preparation. While everyone else saw a lonely boy, God saw a worshiper, a warrior, a man after his own heart. He saw someone who had learned how to encourage himself in the Lord. Someone who had learned to fight lions and bears when no one was watching. Someone who didn't need applause to be anointed. The world overlooks those in isolation, but God builds them. And let me speak to the mind of a man who feels hidden. Sometimes God has to hide you so you don't get entangled with things that would destroy your destiny. He isolates you to protect you. You thought you were rejected, but you were really rescued. You thought you were left out, but God was pulling you aside. You thought they walked away, but God needed to remove their influence so you could finally hear his voice clearly. You cannot hear divine instruction when your spirit is too full of human opinion. You see, isolation is not always external. You can be surrounded by people and still be lonely in your soul. That kind of loneliness is deeper. It's the kind that forces you to wrestle with yourself. But don't despise that wrestling. That's where strength is born. That's where identity is forged. That's where men stop pretending and start becoming. If you are in a season right now where no one calls, where no one invites you, where no one understands your journey, take heart. You may be in a sacred season, a season where God is tuning your ears, toughening your skin, and transforming your heart. Don't mistake the silence for abandonment. He is with you. He is closer than your breath. He is speaking in the stillness. He is carving purpose in your pain. He is building the kind of foundation that cannot be shaken by storms or shaken by applause. The man who can stand alone is the man who cannot be broken by the crowd. The man who can stand in isolation is the man who can stand in leadership. So if you feel alone today, don't rush to fill the silence. Sit with it, listen in it, grow in it. Let God show you who you are without anyone else's reflection. Because when you come out of this season, You will not need validation to function. You will not need affirmation to breathe. You will not need friends to walk. You will be able to run with destiny. You are not inadequate. You are not rejected. You are not forgotten. You are a seed, and seeds don't grow in crowds. They grow in the dirt, in the dark, and in the deep. But when they break through, they become unstoppable. Sometimes when God begins to move in your life, He doesn't add first. He subtracts. He doesn't expand your circle, He shrinks it. He doesn't give you more voices, He silences the ones already around you. And if you don't have spiritual eyes, you'll misinterpret that shift. You'll think something's gone wrong. You'll think you're being punished. You'll think you're being forgotten. But what if the separation was never a setback? What if the isolation wasn't rejection? It was a divine redirection. What if the absence of people in your life right now is not the absence of God, but the very proof that He's getting you ready? When God begins to prepare you for something greater, He separates you. He calls you out of the crowd, away from the familiar, away from the noise, because what He wants to show you can't be downloaded in a group chat. It can't be found in a friend's advice. It has to come from the mountaintop of intimacy with Him. Look at Abraham. God said, "Leave your father's house, your people, your country, and go to a land I will show you." Do you see it? God didn't give him all the details. God didn't lay out the full vision on a spreadsheet. He just said leave. Separation was the first instruction, because God knew Abraham couldn't become the father of nations while staying in the comfort of the past. The promise required distance from what was familiar. Some of you are still trying to drag people into a future that was never meant for them. You're trying to hold on to friendships that are incompatible with where God is taking you. You're praying for promotion, but refusing to let go of the people He's calling you away from. And so, in love, God separates you not to hurt you, but to protect the calling inside of you. You cannot carry divine destiny and public approval at the same time. You cannot be prepared for the palace while still living like the pasture. And preparation isn't just about getting ready externally. It's about the transformation of your mind, your heart, your discipline, and your perspective. And that can't happen in the noise of constant company. Preparation requires pressure. It requires focus. It requires quiet places where God can chisel away your pride, where He can expose your fears, where He can teach you how to lean not on your own understanding, but on Him alone. And often that lesson is taught in the classroom of separation. Joseph was separated, sold by his own brothers, stripped of his coat, thrown into a pit, and carried away into a foreign land. But in that separation, something powerful began to form in him. He was no longer just a dreamer. He became a strategist, a leader, a forgiver. Had he remained in his father's house, he would have remained protected, yes. But he also would have remained unproven, undeveloped, and unready for the throne. God doesn't just prepare you for the blessing. He prepares you to sustain the blessing, and that takes time. It takes solitude. It takes refinement. A blacksmith doesn't shape iron with soft touches. He applies fire, pressure, and the rhythm of repeated strikes. So don't curse the season you're in. God may be shaping something in you that public applause could never produce. And what about Moses, raised in Pharaoh's palace, trained in Egyptian wisdom, but he couldn't lead a nation while still thinking like a prince of Egypt? So where does God send him? The wilderness for 40 years, not 40 days, 40 years, years of silence, years of obscurity, years of caring for sheep instead of standing before kings. But it was in the wilderness that Moses learned humility. It was in the separation that he learned dependence, and it was only after the separation that God appeared to him in the burning bush and said, "Now go, I'm sending you." Some assignments are too holy to be given to unprepared hands. That's why you're being set apart. Not because you're not valuable, but because you're too valuable to be rushed. Even Jesus, before he began his public ministry, was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. Alone, hungry, tempted, tested. Why? Because even the Son of God was not exempt from the principle. Separation precedes revelation. Before he healed the sick, before he raised the dead, before he preached to thousands, he had to win the battle alone. And after the battle came the breakthrough. So if you're in a season where friends are few, where people don't understand you, where you feel like you've been pulled away, don't panic. Don't force yourself back into circles God has pulled you out of. Don't try to reattach what God has intentionally disconnected. Don't go fishing in old waters for new purpose. This is not your defeat. This is your development. This is not punishment, it's positioning. You're not being broken. You're being built. You're not being emptied. You're being equipped. The separation is not a sign that it's over, it's the evidence that something greater is coming. Let God finish what he started. Let him isolate you long enough to prepare you deeply enough. Because when the time is right, you won't have to chase platforms. You won't have to beg for seats. You won't have to force your way into rooms. When God gets through preparing you, the door will open on its own, and you'll walk through it ready. Not everyone who walks with you is walking for you. Just because someone is close in proximity doesn't mean they are aligned in purpose. Sometimes the greatest heartbreak in life is not what enemies do to you. It's what so-called friends fail to do for you. The deeper you go in life, the more you will learn this crucial lesson. Friendship requires discernment. There's a difference between friendly people and true friends. Friendly people will smile with you, eat with you, text you in the daylight, but when the night falls, when the battle hits, when the struggle gets heavy, some of those smiling faces disappear. When you're in the valley, when your dreams get delayed, when you can't offer anything but raw truth and tired eyes, you learn something powerful, that not every friend is sent by God. Some are sent by convenience. Others are sent by comfort, and a few, if you're not careful, are sent by the enemy. Jesus himself chose 12 disciples, but even among the chosen was a Judas, someone who walked with him, talked with him, dipped his bread in the same dish, and still betrayed him. Now, if Jesus, in all of his perfection, was betrayed by someone in his inner circle, what makes you think you're immune from the sting of disloyalty? Discernment is not about being suspicious. It's about being spiritually sensitive. You have to learn how to recognize what someone carries in their heart, not just what they show on their face. Some people applaud you not because they believe in you, but because they want to stay close to your shine. They want your oil without paying your price. They want your platform but don't respect your process. That's why spiritual maturity demands that you test the spirit, not just the smile. Because the devil doesn't always show up with horns. Sometimes he shows up as a helper. Sometimes the people sent to derail your destiny come disguised as supporters. So you've got to pray for clarity, not just connections. You see, loyalty is tested in the fire, not in the feast. It's in the dark moments of your life where the truth of friendship is revealed. When you're misunderstood, will they defend you? When you're empty, will they pour into you? When you're under attack, will they stand beside you or step away? If they leave when the pressure hits, they were never with you to begin with. They were just around you. Some people are seasonal, and that's okay. They came to serve a purpose for a time, but that doesn't mean they're meant to walk with you forever. The problem comes when we try to turn temporary assignments into permanent roles. When we try to drag people into the next chapter who only belonged in the last one. You cannot grow into your future while clinging to the wrong company. God will often bring separation through revelation. He'll show you things, he'll give you glimpses, he'll expose motives you weren't ready to see before. And if you ignore those signs, if you choose comfort over calling, you'll delay your destiny for the sake of not feeling lonely. But hear me, loneliness is better than betrayal. A small circle that's real is better than a crowd that's fake. You don't need 20 people to cheer you on. You need 2 who can pray with you, stand with you, challenge you, and remind you of who you are when you forget. God is too wise to let you carry dead weight into divine destiny. He will prune your relationships so you can bear more fruit. Sometimes he removes people not because they're bad, but because they're no longer aligned with where you're going. Their conversation is stuck in the past. Their mindset is wrapped in fear. Their vision is too small for what God is about to do in your life. You've got to be okay with walking alone until you meet someone who walks in agreement. Do not sell your anointing for approval. Do not compromise your assignment for companionship. Do not shrink yourself to keep people who are not growing with you, because real friends won't be intimidated by your growth. Real friends won't compete with your calling. Real friends will cover you in prayer, celebrate you in public, and correct you in love when you start drifting off course. And if you've been wounded, if you've been betrayed, misunderstood, left behind, don't let bitterness build walls around your heart. Let it teach you discernment. Let it sharpen your spiritual vision. Learn from the Judas so you can cherish the John. Learn from the crowd so you can find your core. Learn what it feels like to be drained by people so you can value those who pour into you. Not all loss is loss. Some departures are divine. Some breakups are blessings. Some endings are God's way of making room for real alignment. So, as you grow, as you build, as you walk into greater dimensions of purpose, don't just pray for friends. Pray for the right ones. Don't just open your door. Open your discernment, because when God sends true friendship, it's not just emotional. It's spiritual. It's iron sharpening iron. It's purpose strengthening purpose. It's love that lasts even when the lights go out. When God places a divine assignment on your life, He doesn't just prepare your environment. He strengthens your interior, because some callings don't come with applause. Some callings won't be met with acceptance. Some assignments from heaven will take everything you've got inside of you to carry them out. It won't be your connections, your charm, or your charisma that sustains you. It will be the strength of your spirit. There are things God has called you to do that you will not be able to accomplish if you're still fragile on the inside. If you're still depending on people's approval, if you're still wounded from rejection, if you're still looking for someone to constantly validate your worth, you won't make it to the finish line, because divine assignments will stretch you, strip you, break you, and build you all at the same time. When God chose Moses to deliver Israel, He didn't send him straight to Pharaoh's court. He sent him to the wilderness. Why? Because before Moses could confront a nation, he had to confront himself. He had to be broken of pride. He had to learn humility, patience, endurance. God didn't just need Moses to know how to lead. He needed Moses to become someone strong enough to lead. It was the inner fortitude developed during years of silence that made Moses capable of standing before kings and splitting seas. And that's where so many people fall off, not because they lack talent, not because they lack opportunity, but because they lack inner strength. They collapse under the pressure of the assignment. They break down when the applause dies. They get confused when obedience doesn't bring immediate reward. That's because divine assignments don't always come with comfort. Sometimes they come with crushing. Don't you know that Jesus, yes, the Son of God, the Lamb without blemish, had to pray in agony before going to the cross? The weight of his assignment pressed him so deeply that his sweat became like drops of blood. And still he said, "Not my will, but yours be done." That's not weak faith. That's inner strength. That's what it looks like to be fully surrendered. That's what it takes to complete your calling. You can't carry a crown until you can carry a cross. That's why God develops you privately before He releases you publicly. He strengthens your soul before He expands your stage. Because He knows the weight of destiny is too heavy for weak shoulders. If the inside of you is still fragile, your gifting may open doors your character cannot keep open. And so He lets you go through seasons that don't make sense. Times when you're misunderstood, underestimated, overlooked. not to destroy you, but to fortify you. Some of you are asking God, why am I going through all this pain if I'm called? You're asking, why am I facing resistance if you gave me this vision? The answer is simple. Because what you're called to do is greater than where you are now, and you've got to be strong enough to stand there. The bigger the mission, the deeper the preparation. God has to make sure that when the storm hits, you won't quit. When people betray you, you won't break. When doors close, you won't fold. Divine assignments are not for the faint-hearted. They are for those who are willing to walk by faith and not by sight, for those who are willing to endure hardship like a soldier. For those who can stay rooted even when the soil gets dry. That takes inner strength. That takes knowing who you are in God, not just who you are to people. It means you can keep walking even when no one claps. It means you can keep building even when no one believes. That's why the quiet seasons matter. That's why the lonely nights matter. That's why the private tears matter. Because what you develop in those moments, integrity, resilience, patience, humility, that's what's going to hold you when the spotlight is too bright. You won't be shaken because your strength doesn't come from outside. It's been built inside. Even Paul, the apostle who wrote most of the New Testament, was given a thorn in his flesh, and he asked God to remove it 3 times, but God didn't. Instead, God said, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." What was he saying? That inner strength isn't about having no struggle. It's about having enough grace to withstand it. So if you're walking through trials right now, and yet still holding onto the word of God, be encouraged. That's strength. If you're being attacked, but still loving people with a pure heart, that's strength. If you're walking through doors you didn't ask for, into rooms you're not sure you belong in, but you're leaning on the Holy Spirit, that's divine strength at work within you. God is not looking for perfect vessels. He's looking for prepared hearts, people who have been processed, people who have been tested, people who have learned how to press when it's painful and obey when it's unclear, people who can take rejection without revenge, isolation without insecurity, and responsibility without arrogance. You don't need the strength of 10 men. You need the strength of one obedient soul fully surrendered to the will of God. That's what divine assignments demand, not talent alone, not intelligence alone, but inner strength. Unshakable, quiet, tested, proven strength that comes from walking with God, not just talking about Him. And when that strength is formed in you, when that fire has burned away the dross, when your spirit has been forged in adversity, there will be no demon in hell, no opinion of man, no storm of life that can stop what God has ordained you to do. Before God trusts you with the weight of others, He will test you with the weight of yourself. Before He puts people under your leadership, He will put you through the crucible of solitude, not to punish you, but to perfect you. Because until you are whole alone, you will compromise to keep company. You will trade your values to avoid being abandoned. You will dilute your identity just to maintain the illusion of acceptance. But leadership doesn't come from approval. It comes from authenticity. If you cannot stand strong in your identity without applause, you are not yet ready to carry responsibility with integrity. God will strip you of all your crutches, yes, even the emotional ones, so you can stand in wholeness without depending on the presence or praise of people. There are too many leaders who are gifted but not grounded, talented but not tested, visible but not whole, and the reason why they fall under pressure is not because they lacked opportunity. It's because they lacked identity. They were never truly anchored in who they were when no one was looking. And so when criticism came, they crumbled. When betrayal struck, they broke. Because their wholeness was built on the approval of others, not the presence of God. You have to learn how to be complete without company, fulfilled without flattery, focused without followers. Until you can worship alone, you're not ready to lead the worship of others. Until you can believe the promise when there's no visible progress, you're not ready to carry the vision before the people. You must walk through the fire of solitude to become fireproof in the heat of leadership. Look at Jesus. Before he called the 12, before he preached to the multitudes, before he raised the dead, he went into the wilderness alone. He fasted alone, he battled temptation alone, he stood toe-to-toe with Satan himself, not with backup, not with a crowd cheering him on, but alone with his Father and his identity. If you are the Son of God, the enemy taunted him. And Jesus, grounded in who he was, didn't budge, he didn't panic, he didn't seek public affirmation, he simply stood on what was already written. That is the picture of wholeness, knowing who you are, even when no one else sees it, even when no one else celebrates it, even when no one else validates it. Because if you don't get whole alone, you will become a hostage to affirmation. You will need constant praise to function. You will look to people for what only God can provide, and that kind of dependence always leads to destruction. Wholeness is not perfection. Wholeness is not having all the answers. Wholeness is being rooted in the truth of who God says you are, even when the circumstances around you contradict it. Wholeness is waking up and choosing peace even when your plans fall apart. It's knowing your value when nobody invites you. It's standing in faith when doors close and still declaring, I'm enough. Not because of what I do, but because of who I belong to. If you are not whole, you will lead from your wounds. You'll preach to get healed instead of preaching from the healing. You'll make decisions from your insecurity. You'll seek validation instead of giving vision. And eventually, you'll burn out trying to meet expectations you were never built to carry. But when you are whole, you lead from overflow, not from emptiness. You serve from strength, not from survival. You bless others without losing yourself. That's why the waiting season matters. That's why the quiet season matters. That's why God doesn't rush your process. Because he would rather hold you back and make you whole than release you too early and watch you fall. And if you're in that season now, if you feel like everyone else is moving ahead while you're stuck in isolation, understand this. God is not punishing you. He is preparing you. He is making you complete so that when you lead, you don't bleed on the people you're called to serve. Being whole alone means you've learned how to encourage yourself when no one else claps. You've learned to pray in the midnight hour when no one else knows you're crying. You've learned to pick yourself up in the spirit when your body is tired and your mind is weary. That's the kind of strength God builds when he isolates you, not to leave you empty, but to make you ready. There will come a time when God sends people to walk with you. There will be a time when your assignment becomes a shared vision. But before that, you must become solid in your faith, solid in your identity, solid in your soul. Because when people come, they will bring not only their loyalty, but their needs, their questions, their expectations. And if you're not already full, you will either break under the pressure or become bitter from the burden. So let God do the deep work in you now. Let him strip away the fear, the insecurity, the false identity, the need for applause. Let him strengthen your spine and soften your heart. Let him teach you how to be content with just him. Because once you are whole alone, you won't lead for validation. You'll lead from revelation. And the people who follow you won't just follow your gift. They'll follow your wholeness. So if you've been walking through life with no one to lean on, no hand to hold, no shoulder to cry on, hear me today. You are not less, you are not broken, and you are not alone. You are being positioned. You are being prepared. You are being strengthened by the hand of God himself. Your isolation is not a punishment. It's an invitation. An invitation to become something more than you've ever been. An invitation to discover that your value is not tied to the number of people around you, but to the greatness that God has placed within you. When God calls a man to destiny, he doesn't always surround him. He often separates him. When God begins to elevate, he doesn't start by giving you a crowd. He gives you clarity. And when he prepares you for leadership, he doesn't test your popularity. He tests your identity. You may be a man with no friends, but that doesn't mean you're a man with no future. You may be walking alone, but you are not walking without purpose. Your circle may be empty, but your calling is still full. You may feel the sting of silence, but it is in that silence where God does his deepest work. Let the separation teach you. Let the solitude refine you. Let the silence grow you. Because when God gets through with you, you won't just walk out. You'll walk out with power, with purpose, and with a presence that's been shaped by pain but secured by grace. And when the time is right, God will send the right people, not to complete you, but to walk beside the whole man you've become. You don't need many, you just need the right one. You don't need noise. You need truth. You don't need the crowd. You need the calling, because when you become whole in the dark, you become unstoppable in the light. So walk on, man of God, walk with power, walk with clarity. Walk alone if you must, but never without purpose, because God walks with men who can stand alone. And when he walks with you, you're never truly alone at all.